So, what we're going to look at here is an example of coastal management, and we're going to look at Bournemouth for that. Okay, this works really well because it also looks at hard and soft engineering, which is really useful because if we have an understanding of the advantages and disadvantages of hard and soft engineering, then that can be used using 6-mark questions such as discuss the effectiveness of soft engineering, or to what extent is soft engineering better than hard engineering. So what we've got is Bournemouth, indicated here along our coastline, very, very sort of brief and shape of the Dorset coastline. And then kind of up along the coast, getting in towards Hampshire, we've got a place called Barton-on-Sea. And the relevance of that will become apparent later. What I want us to look at first is, why did Bournemouth need protection? So if you do the reasons for its protection in red, they stand out. There's some quite clear ones. Okay. Bournemouth's coastline was, before its management, retreating at a rate of 1 metre per year. That's obviously got significant consequences in terms of the area. Firstly, it was projected that 3,000 homes were at risk from that coastal erosion from collapsing to the cliffs, and obviously all their inhabitants in those and their belongings were obviously similarly at risk. On top of that, Bournemouth has a £473 million tourist economy. Cliff erosion was threatening the businesses that formed the basis of that tourist economy, and obviously threatening the beach as well. That was the major attraction. So there was huge concern at the loss of that. And linked with that was the 11,000 tertiary jobs that were kind of involved in that tourist industry that obviously would have suffered, would have been lost, leaving high amounts of unemployment had the coastal erosion carried on. So Bournemouth decided that action needed to be taken, and they decided to take a combination of both hard and soft engineering. The first thing that they did was invest heavily in beach nourishment. So they dredged sand off of the offshore and put it onto the beach to extend the size of the beach. The idea behind this in terms of coastal protection would be that the beach would absorb wave energy, therefore by the time the waves reach the cliffs at the back of the beach, there'd be very little energy left for erosion. And this is a perfect example of soft engineering. It is relatively expensive, we're talking around £4,000 per metre squared, but it is a very popular technique due to the fact that it brings in increased sort of tourist revenue due to a larger beach. The only problem was that longshore drift was moving that sediment that they had put back onto the beach along the coast to Barton-on-Sea. And obviously Bournemouth government, having invested £4,000 per square metre of beach nourishment, weren't too happy about this. They subsequently decided to combine their soft engineering of beach nourishment with the creation of over 53 new groins. Particularly right kind of on the eastern edge of Bournemouth, they created the long groin, which was an incredibly large one, to try and stop that movement of sediment by longshore drift. It's a common problem with beach nourishment that the sediment, if it's not there naturally, won't stay there even when placed there by humans. Okay. These groins were highly effective in trapping that sediment and stopping it from being transported by longshore drift, creating a much, much larger beach. Subsequently, the combination of the two things saw a massive decrease in coastal erosion to virtually 0 metres per year in Bournemouth, indicating a successful management strategy. And projections show that the larger beach created by the beach nourishment is actually going to result in an increase in that tourist income that we talked about before. When we talk about coastal management, we really need to consider kind of what we call a cost-benefit analysis. How much is the management going to cost versus the benefit of what it's going to achieve? Now, the combination of this beach nourishment and the groins resulted in an overall cost of approximately £50 million. Now, that does seem a large amount, but when you consider the fact that that is significantly less, we're not talking nearly 10 times less than the overall tourist income generated by Bournemouth and its beach, then it starts to see that the cost is well worth the benefits. And you could start arguing that it was a highly cost-effective strategy. One of the only real initial problems with the beach nourishment was the colour of the sand. When it's dredged off of the seabed and put on, it's normally a different colour, and some people argued that this wasn't actually particularly attractive. However, over time, the sand will react with oxygen and will kind of slowly change to the same colour as the original beach material. When we start getting into the negatives of this management, though, really, actually, we've got to consider that these negatives aren't focused in Bournemouth. If you were a resident of Bournemouth, if you were a stakeholder living on the Bournemouth coastline, maybe having a business there, you're going to be generally pretty happy with the management strategy that went on. Okay, larger beach, more tourist income, reduced erosion. The negatives of this, or where it's created conflict, is down the coast at Barton-on-Sea. Barton-on-Sea's beach was regularly fed by longshore drift removal material along the Dorset coastline to Barton-on-Sea. Now, when Bournemouth developed these large 53 groins, that longshore drift was basically stopped. And Barton-on-Sea's beach became starved of material. And over time, that beach has become smaller and smaller and smaller. And what we're now actually seeing in Barton is 1 to 2 metres of erosion per year. This is not helped by the fact that Barton has a particularly unfortunate geology, where it has sandstone on the top and clay on the bottom, which is incredibly soft, the Barton clay, so that is easily eroded. And on top of that, when the sand becomes saturated during heavy rainfall, it can slip off of that clay in a process called rotational slump, which is a form, if you remember, of our mass movement. As a result of this, Barton is becoming particularly subject and at risk from coastal erosion. That the cliffs there said eroding at 1 to 2 metres per year, and of course this is causing massive issues for residents and business owners in Barton-on-Sea. And what we're seeing is businesses such as Clifftop Hotel and the golf course experiencing huge amounts of coastal erosion, to the point at which the golf course actually lost its 18th tee a few years ago and subsequently had to shut for business for a period of time. Also, you've got the caravan park at Barton-on-Sea. They're constantly having to move their caravans back from the edge of the cliffs as the cliffs erode very quickly. This is causing a huge amount of conflict between the two areas and the political authorities of the two. As you can expect, Barton-on-Sea residents fear losing their homes and businesses and not happy with what Bournemouth had done. They therefore has created a social conflict between the two areas, particularly as people leave Barton-on-Sea. Young people in particular, those that can afford to move, leave Barton-on-Sea due to the fact that the area is becoming kind of run down because businesses aren't willing to invest in an area that is subject to such high rates of erosion. Then you've got the political conflict between the two. So I'll quickly put that. Remember, when we talk about people moving, we can talk about social displacement. But then you've got the political conflict between the two areas. The authorities in charge of Barton-on-Sea believe that Bournemouth should be responsible for paying for the sea defences required at Barton-on-Sea. They argue that without Bournemouth's management, Barton-on-Sea wouldn't be experiencing this high rate of coastal erosion. Therefore, as Bournemouth are responsible for it, they should pay for the defences. Bournemouth, their authorities obviously argue the other way, saying that their priority is defending their coastline and that Barton-on-Sea should be investing in their own coastal defences. The problem is Barton-on-Sea does not have the financial kind of capital that Bournemouth does. It cannot afford such major sea defences, okay, and the cost-benefit analysis comes in. Okay, whereas Bournemouth has that £473 million a year economy to protect, Barton doesn't have that, and you've got to start just arguing whether or not the management would be worthwhile or cost-effective. It's come to the point at which actually private businesses such as the golf course and the Clifftop Hotel have actually started paying for their own defences. So if you're asked to discuss the effectiveness of it, you can start to see a little bit of a kind of contrast between the two areas. In general, very effective at Bournemouth. Maybe the only concern is that different coloured sand. But if you're looking at it as a stakeholder in Barton-on-Sea, you can start to appreciate why that management, in your opinion, may not be effective.